Hey everyone, welcome back to a new malicious compliance video. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called Too Slow. For context, I, an undergrad student who commutes to uni, have been studying from home since March 2020 due to the uni shutting down all the campuses. Because of this, we haven't had access to the uni library. A lot of the books and journals we needed were behind paywalls online, and some primary documents aren't online at all. Fast forward to a few weeks before this year's final exams, uni sends out an email saying the library is now open again and has bookable study spaces. I booked the space so I can access the resources again to study for my exams. Get into uni, no problem, sit down and begin to study. But after 10 minutes the librarian walks in and comes over to me. "What are you doing here?" "I booked a study space for today. These spaces are only for people who need them." I look around the completely empty library and ask to be allowed to stay as no one else is there. The librarian says I have to leave in 20 minutes. I went back a few days later, but only to borrow some books to study at home instead. As I'm going to the relevant shelves to collect my books, the librarian approaches me again. "What are you doing?" "Collecting some books to borrow." "I told you you are not allowed to be here." She begins to rant about how I am a risk, what's being right in my face, etc. I try to explain that we were told we are allowed to come and borrow books again for our exams. I even showed the email on my phone, and that I am following all regulations. Also note that the library is empty again, and there's nobody on the entire campus apart from the receptionist, librarian and a couple of chemistry students. But this was not good enough for the librarian. She tells me that I'm too slow and that unless I run in, grab the books and get out, I shouldn't come back to the library. Cue malicious compliance. I put some joggers on, laced up my trainers and made my way to uni to return books after my exams. I scanned my ID, walked past the receptionist, put my bag down and took the books out. 3, 2, 1, go. I dash through the corridors, half the lights are off because no one is on campus anymore, up the stairs, swing the library doors open and start weaving in between the shelves. The librarian yells hey, but I don't turn to look. I get to the corner, sling the books in the return bin and bolt back out before the librarian even gets up from behind the desk. I make my way back downstairs, grab my bag, walk calmly past the receptionist, wishing them a nice day and leave campus. Apparently, the librarian went ballistic and filed a bunch of complaints, but surprisingly nothing came back to me. I have since discovered that this librarian complains about students all year, so complaints about me must have just been ignored by management. I wouldn't usually pull a stunt like this, but this year has been really hard academically and we've been largely ignored by the uni. I was just trying to study to pass my exams, so I didn't appreciate someone like this librarian being so insensitive. The next story is called The Parking Brake. One of the reasons my marriage works is that my husband and I have very similar opinions most of the time. One of the notable exceptions to this is the parking brake. When I learned to drive, I was taught to use the parking brake every time I parked. Once I got my license, I learned that not everyone actually does that. I made a conscious decision to continue to use the parking brake for every park. It's better to use it when it is not needed than to forget it when it is needed. Also, building the habit of taking the brake on and off means I'm less likely to end up driving around with the parking brake on and eventually needing an expensive repair. My husband only uses the parking brake when he parks on a very steep hill. Parked on any hill, he turns the steering wheel so that if the car rolls, it will roll into the curb. He actually does what a lot of people do, including my driving instructor. He turns the wheel, then lets the car roll until it's touching the curb. He claims this is extra safe. I don't think it's any safer than just turning the wheel. Tires are expensive and it's unnecessary wear and tear on them to leave them smashed up against the curb. We've come to an agree to disagree about the parking brake. He sometimes grumbles a little when he drives a car that I drove earlier and has to remember to take the brake off, but it's not really any kind of big deal. Well, my stepdaughter learned to drive. Her dad has been the main driving instructor, but with his blessing, because I'm not her actual parent, I've done some driving instruction too. The first time the emergency brake came up, we explained that her dad and I had different habits about how we used the parking brake. We told her that for simplicity, while she was learning, she should do it that way, but when she's out driving on her own, she'll eventually develop her own habits. This was about a year ago. Today my stepdaughter drove and it was the first time she parked on a hill by a curb. It was a slight hill, but definitely a hill. She parked by the curb and asked if she should use the parking brake. At the same time I said yes and her dad said no. He instructed her to turn the wheel and let the car roll into the curb, and that was good enough. I let him finish this instruction. When we got out though, I said that I prefer to use the emergency brake and not press the tires against the curb. I didn't say his way was wrong, I just shared that I do the same parking job a different way than her dad does it. This is a normal thing we've done throughout her learning to drive. Well, I don't know, my husband must have gotten up on the wrong side of the bed, because he got a little salty. He said, maybe you should read the driver's manual and see what it says about parking. I was a little annoyed, but I was going to let it drop. However, once we got where we were headed and I had a minute, I thought I should do just that. We currently live in a different state than the one I learned to drive in, and I've never read the driver manual for the state. I have no idea what the laws or suggestions about parking brakes are. So I pulled up the state manual on my phone and looked at the section on parking. Right at the top, you should use your parking brake every time you park. In the section on hill parking, it says to turn the wheel, but doesn't say to roll your car until the tire is up against the curb. I showed this to my stepdaughter and she found it hysterical, especially since her dad did learn to drive in the state, from his dad who was a retired cop, although he also rarely uses his parking brake. My husband just rolled his eyes at me. I went on to tell my stepdaughter that the most important thing is to secure her car in some way when she parks on a hill. Her dad and I are both good drivers, and as she gets more experience, she'll figure out the things that make the most sense to her. The third story is called How Not to Be HR. Nearly a couple of decades ago, I was doing an entry-level job in human resources and recruitment administration. I had a boss who was so difficult to work for that her average new hire lasted 6 months. She had a thing for hating everybody, and she made it known from the very first meeting. I needed the work at the time and went with it, hoping things would improve. I remember one meeting she questioned me on why I hired someone who indicated they were born in India when there were plenty of Canadians to choose from. Not a welcoming place to be if you are different from the mold, to this day one of the most toxic and poison companies I've ever worked for. She had a thing about administrative integrity. The client is never wrong. Keep them happy and never question them. Support their bad decision making even if it's wrong. Hiring someone with office administration experience, they had to exactly match office administration the clients wanted and match that against resumes. If someone said they did office administration but didn't include sorting pens in their resume, they had to be screened out, despite very obviously having the experience and capability to do the job. My job was to screen resumes and post jobs on the corporate applicant career portal. That's it. One day I was reviewing a job description the client had sent our division. It had numerous spelling errors in it. As per her rules, we were not allowed under any circumstances to edit the copy the client sent us. One day I made the unfortunate mistake of changing a comma at the end of a paragraph to a period, only to get dragged into her office and screamed at. Under no circumstances do we ever change the wording of what the job description says. It was late Friday afternoon when I had an information manager job description come in. One of the typos had included the word asses instead of assesses all throughout the job poster. For reasons unknown, the employment equity section included the word no in front of it in bold, and the salary had an extra digit in it. It looked like someone had typed it all word for word from someone's bad handwriting. Common sense would indicate that this wasn't something to go out, but it was late Friday and I was informed that I had to launch all their job postings without any hiccups or delays. Everyone else had gone home, and so I did exactly that, launched this word for word without changing a thing. Monday rolled by and I got such a reaming out that the world shook. I left shortly after this. They had dragged my boss downtown to corporate on a Saturday to fix it, after so many complaints went up to the CEO themselves about that particular job posting. The portal was buggy, and because their backend system was slow, it didn't allow edits of files already live without contacting IT, who is off for the weekend. So for weeks the posting was visible on all of the job sites as it was initially launched. I learned a lot about how not to work in HR from her. Exactly everything I learned from her I eventually ended up doing the complete opposite of. The last story is called Just Doing What He Tells Her to Do. My dad frequently took my 2 older brothers, the only boys, out camping. He was former military and really into that kind of thing. Between scouts and at least 1 or 2 times a summer, it seems they were frequently gone. So once my mom planned an at-home spa day for me and my 3 sisters. She worked full-time, but it was my dad's job that paid the bills. My mom was not a girly girl, but she was planning on going to the dollar store and spend $20, $4 each per person, on nail polish, hair clips and accessories for girls ranging from like 16 to 8ish. My dad gave her a standard lecture about how they are broke and it wasn't needed, and we, the girls, didn't even like that kind of thing. Although she had already told us, and we were all looking forward to it. So like many things, Dad didn't see the need for it, so it didn't happen. But he would frequently spend over $50 each for snacks and food for the boys each camping trip, in addition to taking them to a local buffet on their way home. All told, with side fees and gas, over $250 a trip. My mom wasn't having it this time, when my dad had left her a note with the supplies he needed her to pick up for the trip. Typically, this wasn't a problem, as she worked at a local school, so she got out by 3 or 4, and he had a 45-minute commute one way. But she wasn't excited to be spending money to allow my dad to spoil the boys after just getting a lecture on overspending just the night before. Now she tried to not let the kids suffer from their fight, so she got their food with one malicious compliance. My dad had asked her to pick up 2 bags of marshmallows for s'mores, which she did. When he got to the campsite and unloaded the food, he noticed 2 half-size bags of mini marshmallows. And to make it more of a screw you, they were flavored and did not work with s'mores. When my dad got back, he asked her about it, and she simply replied they were cheaper and on sale. We never did get our spa day, but my dad was more open to the occasional splurge when he was out of town. He also cut back on his own spending and only took the boys to the buffet on the way home if they were gonna be late or coming from out of state. Thanks for watching the video, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like, comment and subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps in the algorithm. I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.